everybody, welcome back to another Blind Tuesdays. Hope you guys have been enjoying the content on the channel as of late. I am heading out once again, just going to grab some dinner for the family. Hopefully there's no rain that's going to be hitting on us during this drive. It's been like pockets of rain throughout the day, but we're back for another Blind Tuesdays once again, and by the way, just got a new haircut, just trying out something new. I actually got like a line, I don't know if you guys can see it, there's like a line. Just barber decided, I let him experiment just for a sec, just to try out something, and I don't know, I kind of dig it. I don't know, I like it. I usually prefer the shorter look, but enough about that. This is Blind Tuesdays, and this is a very special category because we typically don't talk about superheroes on this channel too much. Last time we did was for Logan, which we dedicated a film of the week to, and if you guys saw that review, you guys would know Logan is my favorite of the superhero genre. I love just how distinct in flavor it is, and because of that, there's, we've pretty much just gone at the top. Now we have to look at just others. Then and there's still a lot of good pieces, to look at within the superhero genre, but to the heights of Logan, I would, it's not that high, but I figured since we did a Marvel thing, but it was like kind of distinct. I mean, it was very, very distinct. So it's hard to, like, when you think of Marvel, you think of the MCU proper. That was very much its own thing. So I figured just to go initially the opposite of that and go for a DC thing. But another film spoke to me. And this film now I want to talk about, and it's actually within the MCU. So it's kind of a return to the MCU on this channel, because we kind of abandoned the MCU a long time ago, or just kind of left it behind. I think it was like Doctor Strange 2, or no, Black Panther 2 was the last time I saw anything from the MCU. But I'm going to dip back into the MCU now for this video and address my favorite of the MCU. That film being Captain America Civil War, which was directed by the Russo brothers. I forget who wrote it. Something Christopher, I forget. Christopher Marcus, something like that, I forget. But this would be their second outing, the Russo brothers' second directorial outing in the MCU. Their first being the film before Civil War, that being Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This being the third in the Captain America series, following up from Avengers 2, Age of Ultron specifically, and has pretty much all the Avengers partaking in this one. With Steve Rogers, played by Chris Evans, taking center stage. And the Avengers are now being asked by the government to sign what's called the Sokovia Accords, I believe that's what it was called. And within these accords, they are basically being brought into the government, and they have to now answer to their authority. It's no longer under their supervision. They no longer have jurisdiction or real say as to what they can or cannot do. They now have to go about the government, and that causes a split between the Avengers and causes a rift between them. And you have one side with Steve Rogers, who believes that they should be able to have free reign, because if they need to go somewhere and the government won't let them, then it may cause more harm than benefit. And on the other side of that, we have Tony Stark, played by Robert Downey Jr., who believes that they should be restrained, and that they should be accepting of those limitations because of what that might mean for them on a moral scale, on a moral idea. Which is interesting to seeing Tony Stark, because Tony Stark being the kind of person that he is, kind of ego-driven. It's interesting to see him take that sort of stance on things, and it builds sort of a character within him. Builds more character in Tony Stark. But discussions become heated, and physical, and what it evolves is into a brawl and ultimately a small little civil war between the Avengers, and a rift between the two. Things get more personal, and what's interesting about the film for me is a lot to just do with that, what the film is wrestling with. It's not to do with global scale. I mean, it's actually quite small in the scale of what this film is. With the other films, it's a lot to do with like an imposing threat, say like Ultron or Thanos or whatever other villains were out there in the MCU, Loki at one point. It's not to that scale this time, So instead, what the scale is now is about the moral dilemmas, about political agendas. It's a lot to do with politics, a lot to do with just agendas and whose side you fall on, what side of the coin you fall on. It's really the crux of what this film is concerned with, and I actually found it to be more appealing than anything else in the MCU, because the rest of the MCU is concerning itself with spectacle and those big, lavish, set pieces. Or with this, it's considering more about the psychology and a lot more about the morality of these characters and where they stand, and ultimately how that defines each person. Kind of the gray, between each of their decision making, and how even though they fall on one side or the other, they still can be considered of good character. It's just ultimately they have different views on how to be who they are as heroes. So in Captain America's case, he just wants that free will to be able to do what he pleases. And if you were to ask me where I fall on the spectrum, I would obviously fall with Tony Stark, because that ability to have free reign and do what you please may be okay in the context of Captain America or these other characters, because, well, we know them to be good people. These sort of stories are not going to flip the script. It'd be different if we saw them taking villainous type roles or devolving into villains. It would be different in that. But we know that they're good people, so that's why there is that that gray area in the film, because we know these characters to be a good character. It would be interesting to see kind of a more realistic, depiction of these ideas, in that, in Captain America's case, if it is all about free will and, being able to do what you, like, not having those restrictions, and when you see trouble, just be able to do something about it. Like, I'm just wondering, it'd be interesting to see just, like, how that might affect that person's psychology, and just, ultimately what they might turn into, if they were to actually apply this to real life. It would be interesting if they actually had committed in that respect, but because it's a superhero film, we have to limit it to just who they are as how we set them up, which is that they're all good characters. So, but thankfully that actually carries some significance, and it carries some of that gray area, and it doesn't feel deflated as a result. But that free will, right, that whole argument, it's basically the argument in the whole film is between free will and restrictions. And I carry a lot of what Tony Stark says in the film, because it's accepting and actually considering more than just ourselves. It's looking at what we can do, our capabilities. The film makes a comment on a lot of the spectacle that these films have, a lot of the consequences to that free will. Where we look back at areas like Sokovia or New York City, how the places are just ravaged, and just people have died because of their actions, even if it is a good character. Like, I go more of what Tony Stark is saying, in that if we don't accept those limitations, I think it's a line in the film, he even says it. He says, if we don't accept limitations, we're boundless. We're just the same as the bad guys, And I agree with that. But that's a lot of what I like about this film, is because it centralizes a lot more on the characters. It focuses more on just their moral stances and how it kind of defines them, and where they, and it's more or less just with Steve Rogers and Tony Stark. The rest are just kind of just there. They're not necessarily partaking in the whole political part of things. Black Widow kind of gets her piece in a little bit, but mainly it is a story between Captain America and Iron Man, and about their relationship falling out, and letting their politics kind of dictate their relationship. And I mean, spectacle wise, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's nice to see, again, a smaller scale fight. That airport fight, I like the fact that it's smaller scale, less to do with like a giant citywide destruction fight, because I don't really find that appealing. So I like that it's a little more smaller in scale, and I like the fact that it's pitting heroes against heroes. That's kind of neat. And I also think that performance-wise, it's probably the best that we've gotten from some of these guys. Robert Downey Jr. specifically, I mean, generally speaking, I've liked him in the role. I think that he's kind of defined that role. So it'll be hard for anybody else to kind of pick that up. But I do think, though, that this is probably his best because of what he's getting in material, because of what his character is given in this film. Like he's wrestling with just his whole morality. There's a character in the film that there's a great scene at the beginning of the film where he's addressing where Tony Stark's like kind of doing like a presentation of sorts to like a college or something like that, and a lady comes up and shows a picture of a kid with her son who she lost in Sokovia, and she puts the blame on Tony, and you see on his face how that kind of affects him, and ultimately puts him on that path to towards the agenda that he has, and again, what's good is that you can kind of see perhaps maybe he's thinking more emotionally, and you can see Steve Rogers perhaps is thinking more rationally. In my book, it's that Steve is looking at it more selfishly, and Robert Downey Jr. is actually looking at it more selflessly, which is very different for his character. But ultimately, why I appreciate Civil War more is because of that area that they explore thematically. With a lot of these movies, it could be just chalked up to just teamwork or just a hero's journey. They're not very distinct in overall characteristics or developments or themes. But this one is. There's a different idea at play, and I feel the conflict. I feel that that varying perspective. I can see where Tony is coming from. I can kind of see where Steve's coming from. So it's not like the film is saying, oh, well, this idea is correct and this idea is not. It's giving room for both of these ideas to flourish and really give their time, to explain themselves, and for us to kind of understand their point of view. I appreciate that. And again, spectacle-wise, nice. Performances, actually better than expected. Usually they're just fine, but especially Robert Downey Jr., I was actually kind of surprised by the level of commitment in this one. But for me, this was like the peak. When it came to the MCU, this really was the peak. And generally speaking, it was one of my favorite theatrical experiences when I was like growing up, going in high school. Like, this was kind of like my real proper introduction to the MCU. I've seen Marvel movies prior to that, like Age of Ultron, Ant-Man, but this one was really like my first big bite of the MCU, and thankfully that bite is coming from the best of the MCU. In my opinion, like, there's not an MCU movie that's probably came close to that. It kind of went downhill for me after that, and the conflict is there, the emotion is felt a little bit, and just overall, there's just more development and more intrigue than I would say for any other film within this franchise. So it has more to offer, and because of that, I can sit here and say that it's the best because of just that, just by that alone, is that it has more. And with that, I just find myself more fascinated, more intrigued, and more satisfied as a result. So yeah, so those are my thoughts on Captain America Civil War. I enjoy it. I enjoy it. I probably, if I watch it again, I probably would not love it as much, just because I'm super fatigued on superheroes. But from memory, I remember really having a good time with it, more or less just because of that thematic quality and that the focus more on character and less to do with the spectacle, which I really appreciated. So, but those are my thoughts on Civil War. You guys let me know your thoughts on Civil War if you guys have seen it. I'm pretty sure you guys have seen it. I mean, it's just one of those, types of movies. Made a bunch of money that year, and it's the MCU, so of course you probably have seen it. But let me know your thoughts on Captain America Civil War in the comment section below. Your thoughts on the MCU in general. I mean, it's just kind of not been the greatest lately, huh? I mean, I don't know. You guys let me know. I've been hearing kind of iffy things about the whole MCU, but as of late, I mean, box office wise, it's not been the best. But this being Blind Tuesdays, I will be spinning the wheel once again, and once I figure out what that film is going to be, or what that category is going to be, I will leave the category right here. So whatever that is going to be, that is going to be for next week's Blind Tuesdays. So there you have it. So thank you guys for tuning in for this week's Blind Tuesdays. Let me know all your thoughts, Marvel related, specifically Civil War, in the comment section below. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.